And Barbara, when you work with your husband, what makes you proud about what you're doing at this point?
Well, I tell you, my husband has always been directed and focused, but most importantly, he's always given back to the community. He's always mentored. He always gave his very best when he was a warden on Rikers Island, like you said, by developing programs to help our youth not come back. In fact, recently, we've returned to Rikers Island to do a program to keep them from becoming recidivists. His initial role was to make sure that they got their services while they were in jail and that they learned enough to keep themselves out of the criminal justice system. Well, now that he's retired and no longer there to promote the programs, although they have many good programs on Rikers Island right now, now the goal, of course, is to keep them from going in altogether. But I'm proud of the person that he is because of how much he's given to the community and how well respected he is in the community.
I'm just trying to figure out, why is it that our communities are bombarded with drugs, guns, and this violence that we have? It's like a culture that has been permeated. I don't know if it's the movies or it's just, now young people, when they're in the street, they fight and it's like a joke. It's they laugh when they see each other, you know, pummeling, beating each other to a pulp. And I can't understand how that all came about. So why isn't I'm not going to say the police, but why isn't it seems like that war on drugs, it seems like we're losing now that marijuana is quasi-legal, and everybody's been saying drugs are bad, so if marijuana is quasi-legal, how can we continue to tell them that it's bad, but under what circumstance? So why isn't that we are more protected from this onslaught of guns and drugs coming into our community?
You want to go ahead?
Well, in terms of, I'll answer one part of it, in terms of the legalization of marijuana. When we were in Colorado recently, they have decided that it's very important to put some of the monies that they're, and it's millions and millions of dollars, but they're going to put some of those monies back into into the communities to make sure that these young people realize, first of all, it's illegal for youth. And the fact of the matter is that when you're young and you smoke marijuana, you lose 8% of your mental capacity. And there's just so many things that have to be disseminated in terms of the fact that, yes, it might be legal, but that doesn't make it a good thing to do. And so they're doing that. They're putting monies back into that. And you want to talk a little bit about the guns?
Well, yeah, we'll talk about guns, but staying on topic with the marijuana, in terms of legalizing it to a certain degree for medical purposes and what have you, what that does is it's going to prevent a lot of our young people, we talking about black, white, Hispanic, from being arrested, going to jail, having their lives ruined for having a $5 bag of marijuana in their pocket. And so when you look at that aspect of it, you know, that's a good thing. You know, but the jury is still out, as far as I'm concerned, in terms of legalizing it, only because from my era, people started out smoking marijuana first, and then it led to other things. You know, so it's a real deep issue, and you know, thanks to folks like you, you know, we're going to keep chipping away, you know, at these problems, and you know, eventually we're going to get to the mountaintop, as they say.
What about the guns?
Well, it's an epidemic in this country. Every year, over 30,000 people lose their lives to gun violence. And for every one person whose life is taken, at least 2 other people are injured. So we're talking about, on average, every year, 100,000 people being either shot or killed as a result of gun violence. Those are big numbers. And then there's an uncountable number of people whose lives are forever affected by gun violence because their loved ones have been either taken away from them, murdered, or someone is, you know, seriously injured, sitting, you know, in a wheelchair, you know, those type of things. And then there's another segment of the population that we don't even talk about, the perpetrator, the individual who did the shooting. You know, they have sons, daughters, wives, families that they're being taken away from. They're doing, 25 to life bids in somebody's state penitentiary. So it's a big issue. But again, in terms of stopping it, we talk about the politicians,
Yes.
Strengthening the gun laws, and then educating our youth and trying to change that culture. A good friend of mine, Fernando Mateo, before I retired, he was instrumental in bringing in some programs. He's a self-made millionaire,
Okay.
and he got his millions by establishing a carpet program, a carpet business rather.
Yes.
But what he did was he financed a program where he paid instructors to come to Rikers Island, train the adolescent inmates in terms of how to install carpet, and when they were discharged, he had jobs waiting for them. But getting back to the guns issue, he was the first guy in New York that initiated the buyback program.
Great.
Yeah, it was Fernando Mateo. So we'll
Okay.
exchange numbers, give you his number, and maybe we can
Great.
get it going again.
That
because
would be really great.
mhm.
You are helping our young people stay out of prison. Recidivism is really a big problem. What are you doing now, or is one of your programs enacted right now that helps with young people with that whole problem, going back to the same neighborhood and not getting into the same kind of situations?
Right. Well, the main thing that we want to do, again, is give young people information, letting them know that if you mess with drugs, if you become a gangbanger, if you want to be a bully, if you don't get an education, that the only thing that's waiting for you is a jail cell. Because people who don't have an education, you can't get a job. And if you can't get a job, we ask a question: how are you going to get money? How are you going to get paid, so
Absolutely.
to speak? And the young folks throughout this entire city, they say, well, I'm going to have to hustle. Well, hustle how? Getting a paper route, picking up soda can? No, we're going to sell drugs. And if you sell drugs, where's that going to take you? That's a recipe for going to jail.
Are there alternative programs, job programs that you know about that these young people can tie into as it relates to the alternative? No recreational facilities available as well.
Right.
What about that? There's so many young people on the corner.
Right.
And why don't we have recreational facilities in our communities, in all of our boroughs? But it seems not to be there. So are there any recreational facilities and organizations that you could recommend where these young people can maybe find an alternative?
Right. Well, again, what we do is we give them information in terms of, the drugs, the gangs, importance of an education. And then, again, as we mentioned earlier off camera, that the leg of the relay race that we're running is this. But we have other folks who are involved in bringing programs to the community, getting involved in the politics, making sure that they have jobs in the summertime, all those type of things. So it's a, how they say, it takes a village.
It takes a village.
So it's going to take a concerted effort from everybody to make this a better place for us all to live in.
We talk about young men a lot. What about the young ladies that are coming up through this
Well,
whole situation?
It's
What
very
about them?
important that we impart that knowledge to them, because what we're finding is that larger and larger numbers of young ladies are going to jail. In fact, at this point, the most in the history of the nation. And also, the women's jail is one of the most violent. So it's very important that all of the information that we're telling the young men, we're telling these young ladies too. And they're taking it in, they're receiving it when we get the opportunities to speak with them, because we've made a very relevant presentation. These young people are visual, and we give them some real visuals to take away with them.
It seems to me that the dress for young ladies today is kind of risque, and with the pedophiles and all of these violent people, you would think that maybe there could be some type of wake-up call to how you dress and how you look and how you present yourself.
Well, that's another thing. You see, it's very important to demonstrate by what you do. So when we go places, we always go in suits. We certainly don't have to. People say, well, maybe some people feel that they relate better to young people in casual outfits, but we're trying to show them that image means a lot.
It does.
It means a lot in terms of being accepted into schools, into jobs. Anywhere you go, people are looking at you and they're making a decision on who you are based on how you dress. It's not fair, it's not right, but it's the truth. So you have to, as young ladies, present yourself because they're important, they're valuable, and they matter. And they have to know that, and they have to dress in a way that people will give them the respect they so deserve.
Well, I want change, and I really feel that what you two are doing is commendable, and I'm just glad that I'm able to have you on the show. Highlights, please. And I just want to see more of what you're doing on other shows. I have another show, Focus on Solutions, and you seem to be focusing on those solutions. And it's just good that you, now retired warden.
Yes, sir.
So what were some of the things that transitioned your life? Because you had mentioned earlier that Halle Berry, she went through a transition with her story where she was in a shelter, and Michael Jordan. So what was that pivot point for you to not take that route that so many other young people have taken?
Well, I wanted to make my mother proud because my older brothers and sisters who came before me went down the wrong path, and I saw my mother stay up late at night, looking at the clock, looking out the window, wondering when they was going to come home, if they were going to come home, and I didn't want to put her through that. So that was one of the reasons. Also, I had, as I mentioned earlier, I had great examples of what not to do. I saw how if you didn't go to school, if you messed with drugs, what the end result was going to be. So I knew to go in the opposite direction. I had great role models to follow from the 40 projects, in the community center.
Yes.
The guys that worked there were fantastic, and they told me in no uncertain terms that this is really just one talent in the mosaic, so to speak, in terms of what happens to you in your household, the neighborhood that you grow up in, the hard knocks that you take. That really doesn't define who you're going to be and what you're going to become. And I took the information and I ran with it. And so as a end result, I'm here, sitting here today talking with you, and we're trying to make sure that other young folks get the same information and realize that just because you're growing up in a tough environment, that doesn't mean that you gotta be an individual who's gonna end up in somebody's jail.
As a warden, would you say that the penal system is better now, or is there any improvements that can be made in terms of what's happening with the inmates? We are an industrialized prison country. We have the most prisoners in the world.
Well,
so
yeah, not to cut you off, but that's what got my attention.
Okay.
I went to a meeting early in my career, and they were passing out literature, and I looked at some of the numbers, and here's what I found. We were averaging over 100,000 new admission inmates per year, 100,000. And then I said, wait a minute, 100,000? By the time I reach my 10th year, that means that over 1 million inmates will have come through the system. And by the time I reach my 20th year, we're talking about 2 million inmates. And this is just from the 5 boroughs of New York City. And so I looked at that and I said, wow, this is incredible. Something has to be done. And that's when my goal became to help the young men adjust to what I call institutional living and to develop socially desirable habits and behavior patterns so that when they were discharged, they stand a better chance on not coming back. And as my wife mentioned earlier, now that I'm no longer in the system, our goal is to make sure that they don't enter the system altogether. And that's why we're doing what we're doing with our program.
Well, the program definitely sounds airtight, and there are solutions, and I'm just glad that you came in and shared all of that